After 9 seasons dealing with her tyrannical TV neighbor, George Jefferson, our first guest should receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Helen Willis from the Jeffersons. Here's Roxy Roker. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, and it's great meeting you after all this time.
9 years.
Mm-hmm. 9 seasons, really.
9 seasons.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but that's a lot of doing, a lot of work.
I came out for 13 weeks from New York, and here I am.
And I understand when you came out, your husband remained in New York because you weren't, neither one of you were certain it was going to be anything steady.
Of course not. Who would leave New York for L.A. without a job, you know?
You did that for 2 seasons?
Yes, we did it for 2 seasons, and then we thought, well, maybe this show's really going to take.
What'd you do, take the red-eye back, you and he?
Oh, yeah, sure, back and forth. Basically, he did most of the traveling. He would come out for birthdays and holidays and that sort of thing.
What does he do for a living?
Well, he works for news, for another network.
And he was transferred out here?
Yes, finally did get a job out here.
Great.
Yeah.
You must be thrilled.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Now, who did we have on the show who was talking about Jeffersons? It was, Robert Hooks. Do you know Robert Hooks?
Yes, I do.
He was on the show the other night, and he claims that the Jeffersons stereotype blacks, and the show is a slant on blacks.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
And he thought so?
Well, he thought so.
Well.
He loves the show.
Yeah.
And he thinks you people on it are wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But he would like to see blacks portrayed differently.
Well, I think that he's right as far as seeing blacks portrayed in a variety of ways. I think that the Jeffersons cannot be everything to everybody, and that is the fault not of that particular show, but I think that's the fault of TV, in that it portrays most minorities basically in a comedic format and not in a variety of ways, such as we don't have a choice of being on dramatic shows, say any one that's actually running. And daytime soap operas have never dealt primarily with a black family or situation, that kind of thing. You know, within the confines of the shows, of the white format, though, there's just neighbors in there. But I think after all these years of soap operas and devoted viewers, black as well as white, I think it's time that they should have one that's primarily concerned with maybe a black family.
Do you feel the characters have evolved in the 9 years?
Oh, yes, I think somewhat that we have, sure. You know, I mean, George is somewhat like the Archie Bunker type, as you know. You know, a black man with a certain...
Well, that's where the whole thing
That's right, an amount of prejudices. And I think that there are some positive things about the Jeffersons, too. Quite often it's easy to poke at maybe the things that are negative because the one show being the, primary one on the air. But I think as far as George is concerned, I like to point out the fact that in this particular situation comedy, we have a black male head of household, with the family intact. He is a working guy. He's a successful man. He loves his wife, Louise, And, there's some nice things to say about the cat. He works, He's not hanging out there on the street. He's not selling dope.
You have a son, I am told, who is, and the kids have told me he's a handsome-looking young man.
Oh.
Has he thought about following in Mom's footsteps?
Not in my footsteps at all. No. He wants to be a musician.
But he does want to be in show business.
Well, yes, that aspect of it. Oh, yes, it's new wave, and hey, man, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, did you hear what we were talking about earlier with Dr. Casorla?
How could I miss it? With things reaching across the street. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see what you remembered.
Well, I remember that. I heard that line.
That was memorable.
Oh,
it was.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I want to know how you told him about the birds and the bees when the time came.
Well,
He's a teen, isn't he?
Oh, yes. He's 18 now.
18.
He knows about the birds and the bees, all right. But
when did you tell him?
I didn't really tell him. No, I didn't do it. I left that job to my husband. I said, when are you going to tell Leonard about the birds and the bees? And he said, I'll get around to it. Well, get around to it. I don't know whether or not they got around to it, but I'm sure Leonard has heard about the birds and the bees and girls.
That's an important addition.
Yeah.
We didn't used to hear about it that way.
No.
We just kind of learned about it from our peers, and that's what I learned.
No, I didn't.
Really?
No. I learned about it, believe it or not, from my father. Yeah.
My mother
Yes, my dad.
taught myself and all of my friends. Ours was the house where the children came and learned about the different aspects of sexuality, both the boys and the girls.
Is that right?
Good.
My mother's an educator, and she loves to teach, and guess who followed in her footsteps? And so we were the center of information in our house, and also we had the most books of anybody.
Well, my father But he did, really. One summer I was going away when I was quite young, and I was going to be away that summer for the very first time, away from him.
Daddy's
and,
little girl.
Yeah, Daddy and I are very close, and
That's
we really
wonderful.
are.
That's
And
great.
my mother is as well, very close with me. But my father knew that I was going away, and he'd always been a very sensitive person. So he took me aside that summer and said, "You're going to be away for the whole summer, and you're now a young lady, and I'd like to tell you a few things." And I said, "That kind of thing?" But it was nice. I think it was
That is
great hearing it
nice.
from him.
And it's not easy for a father. I have all daughters, and my wife did the job for me.
You see, you slept it off on her, too.
Well, I didn't really, but...
Shirking your responsibility.
No, she never asked me, but had she asked me, I think it would have been tough.
I really think
Why?
it's important for
It's
both
easier to
parents
tell
get there.
if I had a son, it would be easier for me to tell a son than it would be my daughter. I don't know why. Maybe that sounds
But I
stupid.
think daughters really need the fathers to be involved because, you're the model of what my man is going to
yeah.
be.
I
That's
think
true.
that I felt it, I don't know, it sort of moved me a great deal to hear it from my father, and I think it was also sort of like a male telling me about males, and I appreciated
because he
that.
cared about you.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
appreciated
moved
that
you.
very much.
How did you learn about sex, Pudgy?
School. My mother
Never told you a thing?
No, she was very quiet, and she told my older sister to tell me, and my older sister, sort of said things like, "You'll find out at school." And I basically found out as I went along.
From other kids?
Yeah, from high school. Oh, it's very...
Oh.
You get a heavy gym class, you learn it all.
The problem is the
It's embarrassing.
distortions, the bizarre tales that children tell each other, and they get you can get a distorted view of life. And when the parents do it and connect love and marriage and caring and family, it's very sweet, it's very beautiful and very natural.
You know what one of my friends told me? This is back in Brooklyn, and I was in high school,
Oh.
and she said, "You haven't yet?" I said, "No," and she said, "If you don't, it's going to spoil." Then I thought something was going to happen. It's not going to be any good.
Like food.
It was terrible. Yeah, And I came back with some line like, "If you never open the can, it won't spoil." It's crazy.
I understand that you've been brought up to be community conscious.
Kind of.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you involved?
Somewhat, yes.
In what?
Well, basically, since I've been out here in Los Angeles, I've become very much interested in the child abuse program. And so I'm working with an organization called ICAN, that stands for Interagency Council on Child Abuse and Neglect. And what we do primarily is that we raise funds to take care of or to support 6 neighborhood houses where families who are in distress and having problems relating to their children can go either after something has happened or before it happens.
I think some people are of the misconception that this only happens to people with children who are really not wanted. And
It's
that's
not true.
No,
In
That is
upper
not
middle
true.
class and in middle
Oh,
class,
Yes, through
the
all the
entire
ranges.
spectrum. On my program, people are calling from all over the country, and from good homes you hear about abuse. And there's many kinds of abuse, not only physical abuse, but emotional abuse can
Yes.
put a child out almost like a cigarette.
I go out to McLaren Hall. I don't know if you've ever been out there. That's where the children are kept here in the county. And during Christmas time and other holidays, we go out there, and it's appalling to see the number of children in the nursery. They're little children who are not... sometimes you say to yourself, well, a teenager, you know how your teenage kids can get to you. I mean, they can really pinch your nerves, And so you say, well, if you go off a little bit, you sort of excuse that and say, maybe they were a little fresh. But when you see those tiny, lovely little 18-month-old
infants.
children sitting there and being
The
abused
parents
with
are
mops
in
on their
trouble.
arms,
They're
yeah.
usually emotionally
That's it.
disturbed in some way, and the slightest crying just is so overwhelming. They just got to stop that crying. I treated a woman when I was first an intern and returned from Britain, and she had choked a baby. And she had stopped. She said, "I stopped when the baby got blue." And her husband had left her. She was on welfare, and she was just feeling desperate, and she was mentally ill, and the baby cried, and she just couldn't stand it. And so she tried to stop the crying. I mean, it's that kind of thinking. It's so bizarre. But fortunately, she did stop, and she did come in for help. And she stayed with me for my entire internship, and I worked with her.
Roxy, what can we expect on the Jeffersons this
Oh,
season?
I hope more of the same. Basically, we're back now for the 9th season, and everything is intact as it had been before. I think you might miss a couple of members of the show. We may not have the children with us as often as we did in the past. That is Belinda Talbot and Mike Evans. But all of us are there, and we haven't heard from the writers what trends they're going to take this season. But,
Good writers on that
Yeah,
show.
we've been having lots and lots of
Funny
fun.
stuff, boy.
Really.
Do you
And
like
it's-
your character, Roxy?
Well, yes, I do. I like Helen a lot, you know, getting to know her better and better. I guess she's Roxy, really, in many ways.
Do you like Irene? I've got to ask you, I don't know if it's just me. I know.
I want to
like her.
I want to thank Roxy and Pudgy and Dr. Irene Persona. We'll be back in a moment with Sandy Kenyon in the news right after this.
You had to ask.